You're listening to the Fiasco Brothers Radio Network. Welcome to Black Op Radio, the voice of political conspiracy research. To call in, we have a secure line ready. Area code 604-525-4167. Again, just call area code 604-525-4167. You're listening to Black Op Radio, the show NSA doesn't want you to hear. And now your hosts, Anita Langley and Len Osanic.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are around the world. This is Black Op Radio, coming from Vancouver, Canada. And in the control room, I have my co-host, Anita Langley.
Hello, everyone.
Great to have you on. Today, we have on Ellen Mariani and Philip Berg. They are two people bringing a really unprecedented lawsuit against the president. And let me just see if we have them on the line. Hello, Phil?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. And Ellen?
I'm right here also.
Great. Wonderful to have you both on.
Thank you.
As many people know, we've heard about this RICO lawsuit. It happened, I think, in December. We'd like to go over some of the details, but just for anyone listening right now, I have a link at the website right now, so anybody online, go to the archive shows, and there's more information there. Ellen, why don't you give us a brief background to what started this whole endeavor?
Well, we had a daughter, my youngest daughter, who was going to be married, and in California, in fact, and so we were taking our little trip to give my daughter away. On September 11th, we both took different flights. I had a plane flight 2 hours before, which was 6 in the morning, and my husband had his at 8. I arrived safely in Chicago to change planes, and that was the end of being married. I became instantly a widow. He never made it any further than the second tower, and he was gone. And I proceeded with a lot of effort 4 days later to continue on to California and gave my daughter away. And the rest is now, hopefully we will find out the truth of what happened on September 11th.
Well, enough tragedy has happened just with losing your husband, and to have this happen around such an eventful day, but something else must have happened as well for you to actually think that President Bush was involved. Was there a wake-up point for you? Was there something that told you that there was something wrong at a particular time, or did you feel it wasn't handled right from the moment?
Well, I wasn't treated very nicely because I happened to be the only relative that was on any of the flights that had another relative, and which was my husband, that was killed. And I'm a person that is determined to find out, was he on the plane? And for 3 hours, I was on American Transair terminal there, and a disaster lady tapped me on the shoulder because the media had mentioned, I asked what was going on, why was my plane, what was happening, and I did not know that what had happened. And he, we were talking, because I'm from New Hampshire, and the planes had come out of Boston, but he didn't connect me, and I asked him if he could find out for me. I could not use any of the public phones. They were all busy, and we were all packed in like sardines, and I'm not used to that airport, which was Chicago. And he came back, and I said, well, did you find out what's going on with my flight or what's going on with my husband's flight? And that's when he came back and informed me my husband's plane had crashed. So for 4 days, well, actually for the next 3 hours, I could not get any answers from United, which he was on. And then I spent the next 7 hours barricaded in their terminal with glares. It was horrible. How dare me even insist on sitting there and taking up their time to be determined I was going to find out.
You're listening to Black Op Radio.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, just it must have been a day that is just hard for the average person to imagine the stress that you're going under just with the wedding to start with, and then losing your husband on the same day, and of course you wouldn't have known about the national security threat, so everybody would be. I can see the scenario, even though I wasn't there. You paint a remarkably clear picture. So from this point, you're already set. You got your back up against a wall, perhaps is maybe a way to say this, and the answers aren't coming properly. So automatically you're asking questions. Do you think that actually gave you perhaps took the eyelids off, the second set of eyelids that some people get when it comes to asking tough questions?
Well, first of all, I'm a strong person. God saved me. I mean, it could have been my own plane. I was one of the first planes to go out at 6 in the morning. I am the type that will, I have to have answers. Don't just ignore me. I will not go away. And I sat there for a total of 10 hours until they finally said, "This is Mariani, pick up the phone." I picked it up, and they said Louis Neil Mariani was on Flight 175, and they went bang on the phone. They didn't say they were sorry, nothing, and then I left the terminal. They did know that my actions and the way I was asking questions, I did not know what happened, and they did not tell me any more that evening until the next morning when I felt stronger. I asked what happened, where was his plane, where did it crash? And they turned the TV on, this stranger in this home that I went and stayed at, and there I see this plane going into the towers. And I said, what is this? And they said, that's your husband Neil's plane smashing into the towers. Well, that just about killed me. Thinking, was he crying for help? Was he praying? What was going on? How did it happen? And I will not stop until I get the answers. So help me God. That's me.
Well, that's amazing, because that takes an awful lot of courage. I mean, most people would just be shocked into silence, just unable to speak. And the fact that you are ready to ask questions right away. And of course, that's what happens a long time. Sometimes these events happen where questions are asked, far too late.
That is true. I've gone through a lot of hell after that with many attorneys that have felt that I shouldn't be asking questions. Just sit there and be quiet. We will get to you when it's time, then you can ask questions, and I'm not the type to sit there and be quiet. That was my husband, my loved one, plus all those thousands of beautiful young people that just melted. And I was informed by one of the New York firemen last summer that I asked him what he remembers the most, and he told me this, and I don't want it to really upset the audience, but there were thousands of empty shoes at the bottom of the towers when it was finally cleaned up. How sad and how sick that we have to be so scared we cannot ask our own government to come forward and give us answers.
Wow, that's quite the sight. And actually, what you mentioned with the lawyers gives me a good reason to ask, actually, Mr. Berg. What was it about this case that made you feel that you should take it when so many, I mean, I can just imagine that the number of lawyers who would be willing to turn their backs on this and never look again?
Well, that was what was interesting, because Ellen mentioned that most people did not want to touch this case, and I remember back, it's funny, I'm a night person. You can call me at 2 a.m. and I'll be in my office. And I'm not a morning person, but that morning on 9/11, I happened to be in my office to meet a client at 7:30 in the morning. So I was sitting at my desk at 9:15, and the flash came across the television that a plane accidentally hit the World Trade Center. So I was glued to it, and my secretaries came in at 9 o'clock, and I brought them in. I said, look at this, and suddenly we saw the plane number 2, which unfortunately was Ellen's husband's plane, fly around and all of a sudden go into the World Trade Center. And I said, something's wrong. And the something wrong was several minutes later when they showed the broadcast, the tape of Bush, President Bush, hate to say it, but President Bush, being told by his chief of staff that a second plane had hit the World Trade Center. And when I saw no reaction and I mean no reaction, anyone that was, it's vivid in my mind. If any of us are sitting, like my office is near a major highway, if any of us are sitting in our homes that can hear the cars go by, and if you heard the screeching of tires outside, all of us would react more than the President of the United States being told that the government's under attack with no reaction. It was like a reaction from an idiot, no reaction at all, and he then went on for the next 18 minutes to listen to a goat story by students, and they came out and said they didn't want to alarm the students. Well, he could have stepped out of the room, and he could have done so many things. And also, the president's not controlled by himself; he's controlled by the Secret Service, and it alarmed me why the Secret Service didn't come in and take him away. But when I saw the reaction or lack of reaction by Bush, I just felt at that point something was wrong, and I've basically followed the story for the last 2 years. And Ellen contacted me this summer, and she was referred to me by a national radio talk show host, and she said, I need a lawyer who's got brass you-know-what, who's got guts. And she called me on the phone, and we spoke, and I said I'd be glad to take this. And she said, I'm looking for one thing. And I said, what's that? She said, I'm looking for an attorney who will have determination to fight for the truth. And here we are about 4 or 5 months later, working together to find out the truth with all of your listeners and all the people in the United States and people around the world. We feel very, I feel honored that I'm representing Ellen at this point, who has made such a determined effort since 2001 to seek out the truth for the death, the murder of her husband. She was the first person in the United States to file suit against United Airlines, which annoyed the government because she did it the one day before they announced the appointment of the Kenneth Feinberg fund. He headed up the fund for victims of 9/11, whereby for the first time in history, the United States Treasury was reached into to give people money to settle up, for the death of their beloved or the injuries of their beloved. But the basic reason was to hide the truth. Ellen has determined and has called it the hush fund, because anyone who takes from that fund is prevented, agrees not to sue the airlines, the Port Authority, or the government. And when you do that, you're basically saying, I can't go after the truth. Now, recently, we've been contacted by a number of people who have taken from the fund, and they want to know if they can contribute to our case dollars, or if they can sign our petition. And we're in discussion with their attorneys. I said it might be a conflict if I gave an opinion, but they're checking it out. But it would be horrible if they would not be able to sign a petition seeking the truth or contributing money to our cause to find out the truth, if it would somehow disallow the monies they took because they had to. So I got into this. I was, like I say, bothered from the beginning. Now the more I'm into it, and I've only been into it like on a daily basis, and I can really say a daily basis, and probably about 20 hours a day. And since August of this year, August of last year, 2003, and I'm completely determined now that definitely we're going to find out the truth one of these days, and we're going to find out that all the evidence points to Bush, the White House, the administration. Because if you think about it, we're now 2 1/4 years later, and not one person has been brought to justice. Now, we're not talking about the robbery of a corner grocery store. We're talking about the largest attack on American soil in history, and there's so many unanswered questions. Now, we know there's a lot of conspiratory theories. There's theories about, whether planes were involved or whether explosions were involved or who was really involved. But Ellen and I, are not at this time going to the conspiratory theories, because the mainstream media, which is basically ignoring this topic at this point, would love us to go there. The administration would love us to go there. Republican National Committee would love us to go there to discredit us.
Yeah, you have to stick with facts.
We're just going right down the center line and saying how many unanswered questions must be answered, because they just don't make sense. For the events of 9/11 to have occurred, 116 different governmental agencies would have had to all fail that day. Just the other day, I ate lunch at the Reading Terminal Market right in Philadelphia, and I asked the waitress, and I'm always asking whoever, clients, people in elevators, waitresses, waiters. I asked this waitress, I said, what do you think about 9/11? Do you think they told us the truth about 9/11? She said, no. I said, why not? I said, do you think the government knew about 9/11 before 9/11? And this 26-year-old said, of course they had to know. With all the sophisticated equipment that our United States government has, how could they not have known this was going to happen? Well, we have facts, we have evidence to prove that they knew it occurred. In our amended complaint, and we filed that, it's on our website. Our website, and I think you're going to put up a link, is www.911, then spelled out for, F-O-R, the truth, Truth.com. That's 911forthetruth.com. There's something very important on that website, and if your listeners can go there, there's a petition to sign. We ask you to read the petition and to sign the petition. The petition basically states that you'll support Ellen Mariani's determination to find out the truth about 9/11. But after you sign it, the more important would be is if all your listeners could send that our website and ask people to sign that petition, send it on to everyone in your email address book. And send it on and ask them, please, put a quote there like, please read and sign and send on. Right now we're excited. Last Thursday, a week ago, we had 600 signatures on that petition. It's a new site, and as of a half hour ago, we had like 4,400 signatures. But I won't be happy, and Ellen won't be happy until we have 44,000 or 400,000 or 4 million, because it should be the hottest petition around. We demand the answers. And I submit to you that if we don't do this soon, we're in real trouble. Because remember, we fought the British 200-some years ago, and we fought for our independence. And from that, our forefathers came up with the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and the U.S. Constitution. The Declaration of Independence starts off, we the people. And that is so important. And if you read down on our website, we're asking people to get together hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, to have a peaceful revolution, to say we're not going to take this anymore. And people say, well, what are you talking about? See, a lot of people don't want to believe that their government was involved in doing anything to their detriment. Well, let's take a look at history. We're now finding out that President Roosevelt knew about Pearl Harbor 2 weeks before Pearl Harbor occurred. He didn't tell anyone, or whoever he did. He wanted us to get into the United States of America, to get into World War II. Well, I submit we could have gotten into World War II without the loss of men and women at Pearl Harbor, without the loss of aircraft and ships. But that's where history went, and the media wasn't as profound as it is today. Today, you sneeze and everyone in the world knows it because of the media with all the news channels and with all of the internet. In 1962, when this should snap everyone to attention, and I'm sure you've covered this on your network, was the Northwood Doctrine. The Northwood Doctrine was our government, our Joint Chiefs of Staff, planning to cause harm to property and death to American citizens and to blame it on Cuba so we could go to war with Cuba. Well, John F. Kennedy thankfully stopped that, said no. Well, you could change the facts of the Northwood Doctrine from 1962, 39 years later, and substitute, instead of Cuba, we could substitute what happened here in this situation which led us into the Iraqi war. What happened here is that our government was involved in the planning of this because George Bush wanted to get us into an international war of terror. And he did, because he was determined to blame it on Osama bin Laden, whether he was involved or not, then to blame it on Saddam Hussein, who we're glad he's gone, but we had no business as country attacking Iraq. The win for Bush, but wasn't good enough, was that Saddam Hussein agreed to allow the inspectors back into his country. You know, we talk about how bad Saddam Hussein is, but who put him into the power that he was in? The United States of America gave him the money, gave him weapons, because we wanted him in the fight against Iran. But all of a sudden he's this bad person, and he was a bad person. But there are other worse dictators around the world who are causing death and destruction in their countries every day, every minute. And we're not attacking them, and we have no business attacking. George Bush, for the first time in history, attacked a foreign government. That is really scary because we've never done it before.
Yeah, and he went against the UN recommendations. Last week when we were speaking to Dave Ratcliffe, he used the word the sponsorship. Who sponsored this operation? Who funded this? And I think that's a really important question, because a lot of people right away said, well, these were evidently Saudi Arabians, and Osama bin Laden's claim was he wanted U.S. troops off of Holy Land. That's why he was upset with America. So as soon as the whole chase started to go to Iraq and Saddam Hussein, I mean, that's where a lot of people started saying, well, wait a minute, I'm unsure of this 9/11 plot, you know, where the $100,000 came from and all that. A reasonable person might say, well, that's maybe too conspiratorial. But then when you start seeing that, you know, the whole chain, the minutes of those meetings, the energy meetings are secret now, so many things, so many connections to Halliburton and SoCal, and then going to Afghanistan, and then there's talk of that pipeline, and now the opium fields are back on. They got rid of the Taliban, they got rid of Saddam Hussein, and meanwhile they still aren't really looking for Osama bin Laden. So when a lot of people start to ask questions, well, just what is going on? So that's one good thing that you're saying, well, you're not really getting caught up in any one conspiracy. You're really just looking for answers. What is the truth, no matter where it takes us? Let's discover what really went on.
That's correct. That's correct, because if you look at the overall picture, it could not have happened. I mean, just think about it. Bush was under pressure. People wanted, the family members wanted a 9/11 commission to be appointed. Bush fought that commission.
Yeah, that's almost unbelievable. And then even to underscore that, with this payout, you had to sign that you were never going to sue the American government.
Oh, correct.
I mean, imagine that. Like, you know, what are they worried about that will come to light that you will want to sue the American government?
Well, interesting enough is, after the tragedy of 9/11, many of your listeners, many people around the country and around the world, contributed money to the Red Cross for the sole purpose of giving this money to the families that lost loved ones and loved ones were harmed in 9/11. Well, Red Cross held back on those monies, and they started giving some of those monies to the FEMA workers in New York, and they started giving money elsewhere, and they started not giving it right away to the victims' families. And that was done, we believe, on purpose, because it forced victims' families to go to the fund, because certain people have called Ellen, and she might want to comment on this. A number of family members have called Ellen Mariani and said, we're sorry, we wish we could be with you, but we were forced to go into the fund because we had one child or three children or different situations. And that's why when you look at everything that happened here, and, you know, like if there's a crime scene, there's investigations go on. Pan Am Flight 300, I think they finally just came out recently and said what caused the explosion on that plane, and they showed little minute, I think 2 quarter-inch pieces, which they said were in a radio, which caused the explosion. Well, where's all the evidence from 9/11? The site was cleared, everything was taken to a landfill in New Jersey, and all the steel has now been shipped out to China. Where's the investigation? I mean, just the legitimate questions that must be answered. For instance, we have been contacted by a representative of the 28,000 airport screeners. They said, how come they're the scapegoats of 9/11? They have to go back to 9/11. At the time of 9/11, number one, you could take fingernail clippers, you could take scissors, and you could also take box cutters legitimately onto a plane. Now, what evidence do we have that there were box cutters on any planes? Supposedly by a phone call, we think by a cell phone, I have to look for the transcript, But supposedly a cell phone call, and cell phones really don't work on airplanes because we've tried it. We've had associates try it. But assume maybe it was a real plane, real phone on one of the planes that had a, air phone. From that phone call, supposedly a box cutter was used to harm the neck of a stewardess. Even if that's true, what correlation is there? What evidence is there that there were box cutters on the 3 other planes? None. It's another one of these false stories. We know from 1995 that planes might have been used, that Al-Qaeda had planned when they tried to blow up the World Trade Center. We know that they were thinking of using planes back in 1995 to fly into the World Trade Center in New York or the Sears Tower in Chicago and other buildings. Now, therefore, at 8:20 a.m. on 9/11, with all the knowledge the government had, and they had a lot of it, but even if they didn't, but at 8:20, when that large jet went off out of their position, every jet in the United States should have been scrambled to look for that plane. Now, somebody might say, well, Mr. Berg, that's far-fetched because we don't know, and they forget for a minute about Payne Stewart, who a few years prior to that was on a plane, and it just went out of control from Florida all the way up to the northern United States, and United States military jets escorted it the whole way because there's a standard operating procedure of what to do when a plane is off course.
It took them minutes, too, to respond to that, didn't it?
I'm not sure the exact timeline. I want to check it out. Someone said even 20 minutes. But even if it took 20 minutes, 20 minutes after 8:20 would have been 8:40.
Yeah, that would have been plenty of time to save some lives.
Well, we might not have been able to save from the first plane hitting the World Trade Center. But Ellen and I have discussed this next situation. At 8:48, when the first plane hit the World Trade Center, and it was flashed across newscast that a plane accidentally hit the World Trade Center, the government at that point knew they were under attack. So if every jet plane in the country, because we didn't know where the next attack was going to come, except Bush probably knew because of what really happened, but if every jet military plane was scrambled at 8:48, and from bases on Long Island, from bases in Atlantic City, from bases in Washington, the second plane that Ellen's husband, Louis Neil Mariani, was on would never have struck the second World Trade Center. Unfortunately, he might not have survived, but that plane might have ended up in the Hudson River or someplace else. But instead of scrambling planes from Long Island at 500 miles or 1,000 miles an hour, wherever they go, they scrambled some planes from Cape Cod at one-third throttle. Now, someone should be court-martialed for that. Someone should be brought to trial for that, but no one's been brought to justice. And when no one's been brought to justice, and when the White House is stonewalling the 9/11 Commission by not giving them the PDBs, the Presidential Daily Briefings, and not giving them other information that they're looking for, something is wrong. We shouldn't have to beg our government to give us information to find out the truth of 9/11.
Yeah, an inquiry is something that is good for everybody because, for one thing, it can help plug up problems and prevent things from happening again. So in that kind of light, I have to say, whenever resistance is put up to an inquiry of sorts, when a major event has happened, such as the execution of a president of the United States or somebody, along those lines, a political representative, we should be really concerned on the whole that there may be other things at work. Because there should be, not to just lead away from the topic with the 9/11, but there should be a trial in the case of President Kennedy. When you have situations where these things are not followed through with, investigations, inquiries, then that leaves too many questions unanswered, as you mentioned, and actually it leaves me to my next question. If when the time comes that you have President Bush on the stand and you can ask him, or could theoretically ask him questions, what would you ask him about what he knew?
Well, first off, Ellen wrote a letter, an open letter to the President. Ellen, you're still there, aren't you?
I'm still listening.
I know, I talk too much. Ellen, why don't you why don't you come forth right now with some of the questions that you would ask Bush?
I just wanted to mention to Anita and all the audience out there that what I have learned, I want to pass on. It was very quickly after 9/11 happened, that my attorney very quickly wanted me to do him a favor, and that was to go to a doctor. And I played with him for a minute, like you would with a cat and a mouse. I said, "You want me to go to a doctor?" "Well, why would you want me to go to a doctor, Mr. Nolan?" He was my first attorney. "Well," he says, "I think it would be good if you got some medication." Perhaps I was asking too many questions, probably. So I said, "Well, why would you want me to do that?" And he said, I'm a little older than him, too, by the way, and he said, "Well, that would help your case." Oh, well, guess what, Attorney Nolan? You go to the doctor, and then you go to hell, because I was too smart for them. And I have to tell the audience in Canada that the percentage of these poor families that lost loved ones were, and a lot are still on medication, and you're not hearing from them, which is very sad. And another thing, when Phil was talking about the Red Cross, they gave us a little bit of the money, then they stopped in midstream. They promised us more, but they decided to say to us, "Oh, we need your last 3 years of your W-2 forms." And I said, "Really? You know who we are. We've given, all the identities of our loved one that we lost. Why all of a sudden?" "Well, we just do." What had happened was they changed board members in midstream. George Mitchell was first for a year, and then Tom Ridge came on from the Bush cabinet, and he sat in on as a board member. And now things were getting a little different. So I said, "Well, Mr. Red Cross, it's tit for tat. If you want all our private information, let's have some of yours. So you send me an itemized accounting of where the money has been going." Well, okay, and he did. And that is what Phil is talking about, that I have telling there was thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that went to workers cleaning the sites, which was that was our money for the families that you beautiful people out there gave for us to help us get on our feet, which we're all worried sick because my husband was my breadwinner. And they took the place of FEMA. The government was supposed to be doing this, and they took away and stole our money. That is another thing. I found out many things, and I know I'm probably stronger than a lot of people, and I'm older than a lot of them, but so far I've kept a clear head. And yes, I will go on that I sent an open letter to the President of the United States, and it came from my heart.
You're listening to Black Op Radio.
And I don't know if, Phil, if you mentioned it is on the website.
Yeah, that's quite a letter, too. That's what got me very interested. Maybe
you want to, on the website.
Yeah, if you want to go through maybe just a couple of points of that. And by the way, we are getting emails in, and one of them just said, "God bless you, Ellen." So.
Well, thank you. I mean, I miss him every day, but I was the first plane. God saved me for something, and we're only here on this earth for so long, and if I can do what I'm supposed to be doing, which who knows until it's God's time to tell us what to do, this is what I have to do for all the young people.
Why don't you just go through a few of the points for someone who has not read your open letter?
I'll read it. I'll just read a couple, and then the other things at the tail end. This is to Mr. Bush. This open letter is coming from my heart. I want you to know that I'm neither a Republican nor a Democrat, and this is not an attempt to bash the government. You, Mr. Bush, shall be held responsible and liable for any and all acts that were committed to aid in any cover-up of the tragic events on September 11th, 2001. As President, you have a duty to protect the American people. On September 11th, you did not instruct your staff to issue a nationwide emergency warning/alert to advise us of an attack on America. We had to receive the news of the attack via the news network. And then it goes on and on. But the part that really got to me was at the tail end. I put the first lawsuit in New York. They're still playing with this lawsuit in New York. It was a wrongful death against United Airlines, and it was to be a trial by jury. They have taken away the wrongful deaths. They have taken away the trial by jury, and they plunked me with everybody that followed me as a negligent case. And by the way, I put this in one day before Kenneth Feinberg put in his special compensation plan to keep people quiet and pay them off. I can't take that money. That money is taking away our freedom, and it's like saying we're talking in place now of those that can't talk. And it's like them saying, don't let us die in vain. We have to know that others in our future, our children and children, will then be protected. And the things that they've used the excuse, it's, oh, we can't tell you. The Department of Justice got into it. The Transportation of Aviation got into my lawsuit. I sat right in the courtroom. Evil, evil. That is the feel that I got. They blocked it, saying it's security reasons. Well, okay, let's take 7 of those last questions that I have. 2 of them say, if the black boxes are a security reason we're not supposed to know, okay, how about the voice boxes, or voice recorders? But the 2 things that does not have any security at all is give us the true list of every passenger that went on that doomed flight, 175 United Airlines. Just do that. And also show us by surveillance tapes our loved ones going on to the doomed plane again. Now maybe between the passenger list and the surveillance tape, we will be able to see our loved ones commingling with these quote-quote terrorists. They can't do it.
Now, have they offered any reason?
No, they're ignoring us, hoping we all go away.
Because there's some question about who was really on the plane, like some of the names they announced as terrorists were people still living.
Well, they have a list, a passengers list, and there was no terrorist names on those passengers lists. They're all loved ones. So if they've got a separate list, I challenge you, Mr. Bush, to come forward.
And if I could just go back a little bit to the point where you had mentioned where you were advised to go on a medication, I imagine perhaps you've realized, or maybe you realized at the time, that had you taken that medication, that it would your mental competence could have easily been questioned in a court of law.
Well, at that time I didn't realize, and thank you for bringing that up, Anita. At that time I didn't realize that number one attorney, while I was grieving, I mean, I wasn't this as strong as I am right now, he had weaved into my contract power of attorney. Yes, I would have been a statistic too, because between him writing in there power of attorney in my contract, I have 4 grown children. How dare him do this? And then saying go to a doctor. Oh yeah, I would have been putty in his hands. And I don't know how many other people fell for this trick. I happen to have been taking care of veterans for many years, and they were psychiatric veterans, so I was on to him when he brought that subject up.
Well, good, because that ploy has been used on people before, and it's very devastating. Pretty hard to undo when you've got kind of, all you have to do is bring any question of mental competence, and it makes you look like a nutcase, which is, and you're avoiding a lot of these questionable areas, which is very important. If you're going to tackle something like this, the last thing you need to be called is conspiracy theorist.
I was just thinking how good that and articulate that letter was to the president.
It came from my heart, too. I mean, I had never written letters before. I also have another one. It's a goodbye letter to my husband. One of these days we'll have that up on the website. And to me, it was my way of grieving and saying goodbye.
Now, what Anita was alluding to is I did have a couple of questions that I wanted to bring up with you. And from my point of view, the things that got me questioning right away was I thought that as a matter of fact that, maybe I had seen one too many TV shows, that the White House and the Pentagon had like small missiles on the roof and a defense system that was par none. That it was, no way you could fly something into the Pentagon or the White House. And especially the Pentagon. I've driven by there a few times, and they were going through years of renovations on the thing. money was no object, it seemed. And that was the number one. And the number two thing that set alarm bells off for me was the airline stock trading that went on the day before, when it was somebody, I think with Tom Floco, had done a 10-year study of it. It was a 400% change from what traditionally had gone on airline stocks.
The real question on that is the inside trading that took place, not just one day, for several days before that. The money that was made by shorts and puts and different things on the exchange. And if you could trace the money where it went, you could really find out some more truth about 9/11.
Now, I didn't know too much about it, but there happened to be somebody who's very hip to the stock market. And that day, and the next day, they were reporting that. They were reporting, discrepancies.
Right.
With,
they reported a lot of things and they stopped reporting.
Yeah, they stopped right away, but he couldn't believe it. He said, my God, they're actually gonna uncover this, because for them to be on this trail this quick means they'll be onto it. And then after that, I heard nothing. And I always remembered his words of, saying, this is the real key, follow that money. And with those two things, any kind of defense system at the Pentagon and the White House, I thought that there was no way you could fly even a missile into it or anything. They would be so well prepared. And it seems with the Pentagon, they weren't at all. And there's just starting to be a lot of questions. In fact, there is a website called unansweredquestions.org. You may be familiar with that as well. But anyway, that was the two things that really I thought brought suspicions up to the whole thing. Because even for the next month or two, even to have suspicions to discuss it, you were unpatriotic. You were, how could you even discuss this? Of course, it was just hijacked and planes crashed into there. Couldn't be anything else, right? But I think really looking for the sponsorship of this whole operation is really what's going to be, if anything, an eye-opening downfall of this Bush regime.
It's true.
What were your thoughts on, Phil, on this airline stock trades?
Well, it's just another piece of evidence which looks into the whole picture of what really happened on 9/11 and who knew. I mean, for the inside trading to go on, someone knew something. John Ashcroft was told in July 2001 not to fly commercial aircraft anymore. On September 10th, many people in government and friends of government were told not to fly on September 11th. How come Ellen's husband was not told not to fly on September 11th?
Or myself. I was flying.
Or even Ellen. She could have been on that plane.
Right. Now, did you see the Times of India article written in July prior to September of that year, mentioning that the U.S. planned to be in Afghanistan in October?
Wow.
No, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, well, I'll have to forward you that link.
Please do.
Okay, yeah, because I found that one very interesting, and the foreshadowing was more than uncanny.
And now Treasury Secretary O'Neill, even though I guess they have something on him, he backed up a little bit, but he said that they were talking about that from day one of their administration, of going into Iraq, because Bush had to go to Iraq. I mean, the win was the inspectors would go back there, but that wasn't good enough for him. And then, unfortunately, they got to him like, they've gotten to other people. And with the rights are being taken away, ladies and gentlemen. The Stabilization Act was created after 9/11. We've taken a position it's unconstitutional. It's being ex post facto, created after the fact. Also, and that takes away rights of people in this country. They've also created the Patriot Act 1 and now the Patriot Act 2, which takes away your rights. And then they just did something new. They announced the past couple of days that by this summer they're going to have color coding of everybody who's going to fly. If you're red, you can't fly. If you're the other colors, you'll be... I mean, think about what's happening. This is Big Brother.
Yeah, Orwellian speak here. The Patriot Act, just the name of that one sends shudders down my spine. I mean, you can't really get any more blunt, and it does have that effect initially of scaring people, but I don't think we're in the same day and age as perhaps George Bush's advisors would maybe wish that we were. And after the initial shock wears off, I think a lot of people are getting pretty agitated. I mean, I'm hearing, we live up in Canada, and I'm hearing about people who have no interest in U.S. politics going, hey, have you heard about this U.S. Patriot Act? I mean, this thing just robs the Americans of their rights. This is something that totally un-Americanizes the American people and takes away your dream. So, yeah, the people should be upset.
But even the coding of the people for airlines. I mean,
that is new by me, and that's really freaky.
I mean, stop for a minute. Are we safer today than we were on September 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11? No. Airport security. You know, the only thing that's really done in the airport, in my opinion, I won't speak for Ellen on this one, is that it's curtailed, it's hurt businesses at airports. I mean, if you think about what they've done now, they make it so you can't go into an airport unless you have a ticket. So all the businesses are there who used to survive, make money on people taking their loved ones and waiting till the plane took off and waiting for the planes to come in, cannot be in the airport. If you pull up at the airport terminal, they tell you to move your car. Well, I mean, think about it. The people we're supposedly looking after, because I don't believe that these people really existed to the way the Bush administration will tell us, these people will blow themselves up because if they're a man, they go to heaven, they get 21 virgins. So if you pull up at a curb and the officer tells one of these hijackers to move on, and the person says no and he explodes the car and he kills, the potential is there for damage. So what are we really doing? And the studies have shown that the back doors of the airports are wide open as far as people getting onto the tarmac from food companies or cleaning companies or other personnel. The color coding which is going on now is of telling us the tourists the level. This is just a scary tactic, the stopping of these airplanes coming in. I mean, I think, in my opinion, they're overplaying this. They're trying to scare us. And the other day I was over a friend's house and I said, sign my petition, a petition that's on www.911forthetruth.com. And the young lady said, I can't sign it. I said, why not? She said, the government's looking. I'm sure the government's looking at that. Well, do we realize how scary that is or frightening if you're afraid of your own government? This is what happened back in Germany. People said, it won't happen to me. They can't take away my rights. Well, our rights, ladies and gentlemen, are being taken away. I mean, right now, they could actually, under the Patriot Act, come into my office, take me away, put me in an undisclosed location, not allow me to speak to an attorney and claim that I'm a subversive. I mean, the power, we can't do this. I mean, it's time for America, it's time for us to stand up and say, we're not going to take this anymore. And that means getting rid of Bush and his cronies and getting them out of there. And the first step is signing our petition, spreading the word. I'm not going to be happy till I get up to 1 million signatures, and then I won't be happy till I get 10 million signatures. And I think we can do it. Did you know that if 30 people, and I'm sure you have many more than 30 listeners, if 30 of your listeners would send it on to 30 of their friends, and 30 of their friends, 30 to the fourth power, sending it on, signing and sending on, comes up to 800,000 people. Without the Internet, we would not be able to proceed.
That's right.
But the Internet has helped this case be alive. Radio shows such as yours. We're now on a lot of radio shows. One person hears this, the next one hears this, and it's spreading. This case, the interest of 9/11, is more understood overseas, in Canada, in Germany, in France, in Australia, because people overseas know that something's wrong here in the country. And it's time for the American citizens to stand up and say, we will not take this anymore. And we have to do it, because if not, like to the airport coding, just think what they'll have come up by Christmas time. I guess they'll have something, on your, I don't know what, something on your finger to see if you can go visit Santa Claus or not with your kids. This new airport screening thing where they take your picture and take your thumbprint or your fingerprint coming in or going out of the country for certain people. That's another step. I mean, they're taking away our rights under the guise of terrorism, and terrorism is B-U-S-H. It's called Bush.
Can I say something here that I didn't get in? I put my lawsuit in, the first lawsuit in New York against United Airlines because my husband didn't have a safe trip to his destination. I put it in December 20th, 2001. Kenneth Feinberg, the special master that was appointed by Ashcroft to do this victim's compensation, put his in December 22nd. He had a fit. How dare this woman to put a lawsuit in? That same man got in with my number one lawsuit, the one who had put in the power of attorney, the one that was trying to steer me to a doctor. Kenneth Feinberg and Attorney Nolan were conspiring together against me, and also tried in December 26, 2002 to trick me to the courts in federal court in New York again, the second time. And that is why on our lawsuit at number 10, Kenneth R. Feinberg is mentioned, because I have Kenneth Feinberg's letter to prove what he was doing to a grieving widow behind my back, which is illegal. I just want people to know what I've gone through to keep my rights and my wits fighting for our loved ones that were lost.
Okay. Well, so now you're working on the petition. Once you've got that in hand, what's the next step?
Well, right now the case is pending in court, and we're waiting for the next move by the government. We had filed an original complaint, just putting the government on notice, and they filed a motion to dismiss. We filed an amended complaint, which is on our website, which sets forth the details. So we don't know what they're going to do next, but we're waiting. But we're not going to wait too long. So it's our belief that the government and Bush, and we think perhaps we're going to be filing a motion, because isn't there a real conflict of interest for the U.S. Attorney to being representing these individuals? We think it is. So we'll file the appropriate motion on that. We're going to be filing some motions to take the deposition of George Bush, and we believe that will be allowed. I don't know if fight us, but that should be allowed under the Paula Jones versus Clinton case, where his deposition was allowed to be taken even for an act that supposedly occurred when he was not in office. We were going to file a motion to take the deposition of Saddam Hussein to find out what he knows or doesn't know about Osama bin Laden. Have they discussed things? Where he might be, and the events of 9/11. We also plan to take the deposition of Zachariah Moussaoui, the supposed 20th hijacker, to find out what he knows or doesn't know about 9/11. You notice his case has not moved to trial at this point because he wants certain witnesses, and the government does not want those witnesses to testify. Our question is, why not? What are they trying to hide? There are so many questions. Here's some. For instance, the National Security Agency stopped the Minneapolis FBI from investigating Zachariah Moussaoui 3 times. Now, why was that done? Now, did Al-Qaeda do that?
Now, I'm glad you brought up the National Security Agency, because this is something that's been a thorn of contention for me for a while. In all of this, I have to ask, where was the NSA? And from what you're saying, this is about all I've heard from the NSA, and that they interfered. They just got in the way of an investigation.
Right, but why did they stop investigating the Minneapolis FBI? Well, who did it? Did Al-Qaeda do it? No, who did it? Bush did it. Why did the National Security Agency, that's the president's hand-picked security advisors, stop the Phoenix FBI from investigating Mohammed Atta? Did Saddam Hussein do that? Did he stop the FBI? No. Who did it? The USH. Bush did that. I mean, when you just go through the basics in here, do we know that the CAPS 2 airline background check system, which they're using now, was in place on 9/11 at Logan Airport? And 6 of the supposed terrorists, were already on a list to be stopped and detained, but yet they weren't. And 2 of the 6 terrorists for the previous bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993 were on that list, yet they were allowed to board the planes, all with one-way tickets. Now, this is 12 Middle Easterners who could barely speak English, and they used a credit card, for someone else's credit card, not even a passenger's. And they also used the credit card to purchase tickets for 5 more people. I ask all the listeners with all humility, doesn't that sound a little suspicious to you? Why did the Bush administration send jets all over the country to pick up members of the bin Laden family and dozens of other Saudis on 9/11, 9/12, and 9/13, when all other planes in the United States were grounded, and fly those individuals out of the country without being interviewed by the FBI or the CIA? Doesn't that sound a little unusual, to say the least? It's outrageous.
Yeah, more than unusual.
It's outrageous. No one else could fly. Ellen Mariani couldn't fly to California for her daughter's wedding, but yet planes are going around picking up the bin Laden family to take them out of the country. Something a little strange on that.
And he swore on a Bible to protect his country, our country, as the new president.
Well,
Who came first?
Yeah, I think the big oil companies and his ties, who he's being a puppet for, came first.
Right.
And it's very good that people like you are in a position to bring some kind of court trial, to bring some depositions, hopefully, to bring a light on what's really going on before it's really too late.
Well, we feel very good about the following, that since we filed this lawsuit, we've been contacted by former FBI agents, former CIA agents, even 2 weeks ago by an interpreter for the government who has told us and is now sending us documentation that she was told to lie regarding translations dealing with 9/11.
That doesn't surprise me, because from what I understand, there were a lot of people who knew there was something going on, and as much as sometimes it sounds like we sit here and bash government, this and that, there are a lot of good people working in jobs all over the place, be it the CIA, be it the FBI, people who are trying to do their jobs, people who knew there was something wrong, and people who tried to do something about it, and for whatever reasons were thwarted, whether we're talking just incompetence, which I doubt, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt just for that statement, or whether we're talking sheer negligence, and complicity. Who knows what. But yes, I'm not surprised at all if you have people coming forward, because you right now would be this beacon for all these people who know there's something wrong, and there've got to be a lot of them. You are the ones now in a position to maybe get this some kind of a legal case set forward where this is actually documented. It's not that easy to do, and if you've started the ball rolling, I have to wonder how many actually victim families perhaps have contacted you that didn't settle. Have there been any?
Yeah.
Several people have contacted us, and we're trying to determine if we can turn the case into a class action. We've been contacted by, I told you, the airport screeners who were directly affected. We've been contacted recently by survivors of the World Trade Center, people who got out of the World Trade Center who are now out of jobs. Well, weren't they hurt by the events of 9/11? Shouldn't they be allowed to bring an action? So we're looking into that at this point. And I told you there's many people who have contacted us who have taken money from the fund and they want to sign our petition. They want to contribute money, and we're just checking that out for them with their attorneys to make sure that by doing that, they don't give up their rights to the fund, which they shouldn't, but with this administration, who knows what.
Are you getting the sense from any of the public that you're doing something wrong, or is this just something that the vibes that you're getting from people who are trying to maybe slow you down?
I know, we're getting the public response in the short time. Remember, it takes time to spread. It's been fabulous.
Yeah.
If your listeners can take time once they sign our petition and send it on their friends, do that first. But go back to our petition, and if they click on the various numbers there, they can read the comments that come from people's hearts about the questions, the unanswered questions of 9/11, and that they really compliment and commend and praise Ellen Mariani for having the guts to stand up to them. And the comments in there are, if Bush has nothing to lie, why don't they just reveal everything? And Ellen and I have taken the position that if George Bush would release all the information he has, and the FAA and NORAD and every other agency, and we would find out from reviewing those documents that nothing was wrong we would withdraw our lawsuit. But we're sure that something was wrong, that they will not be able to release all these documents, and we're determined to find out the truth. Now, one thing, we have not been personally threatened, but we've been warned by people, be careful. Ellen Mariani and Phil Berg are two very sane individuals. We have all our facilities there. We know what we're doing. If we end up with a bullet to take our lives, we did not commit suicide. Our cars are in good working order. And we are saying this on every show we're on for the reason that if, God forbid, something happens, hopefully other people will pick up the gauntlet and demand answers, because answers must be given, because right now all of our rights are in jeopardy.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people are looking to the judicial system of America as a guide. And with the Bush regime and administration, it seems to be so out of control, out of whack, that a lot of other countries are worried as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the thing. Like the one question that was only asked for a day or two was why? Why did some other country attack America, attack the World Trade Center, attack the Pentagon? But you know, what did America do to invoke this response? And then you haven't heard that ever again. You know, why? And that's the thing: is it America's foreign policy, or is it, you know, big oil companies that are using America to take out their agendas? And it's not even the real foreign policy as voted on by Congress. It's something else. And who's making the money in the oil there in Afghanistan and the heroin fields and the pipelines that are going through? I mean, who's making the money? And all it is costing the American citizen to fund this, right? I heard a good line on the Daily Show with Jon Stewart, where he said the reason George Bush is making such a big effort to go to Mars is he's given up on Earth.
Oh, that's good.
That's very good.
I love it.
Also, I really think the reason he's doing this, he's trying to talk about anything other than, you know, to divert the attention, you know, away from anything that could be hurting him at this point.
We're really thankful for your interview, because I haven't heard one word of this anywhere. And I've tried to do a search for any kind of newspaper, any TV show that's covering your story, and there's just a vacuum. You know?
Phil, you can explain that one real fast.
Well, we think that's because most of the big companies in the United States, their individuals, their representatives are on the Council of Foreign Relations. And really, the Council of Foreign Relations, for instance, I was talking to someone yesterday, I won't give her name for obvious reasons, from NBC. And I said, well, why hasn't NBC? Because she's doing a private documentary on the events of 9/11. I said, why hasn't NBC done anything on this with Dateline or one of their other shows? And she said to me, well, just think who owns NBC. And I said, well, who? And she said, General Electric. And General Electric, therefore, owns many other companies. And General Electric is on the Council of Foreign Relations. And the Council of Foreign Relations is not a government body. It's like an unofficial body, but they have influence to our Congress and to the President, because it's made up of big officials from all over big companies in the United States, and government officials, former and current officials. So this is why we believe that the media, you know, is really not covering this story.
Right, and to underscore that, if this was frivolous, you can bet that they would be all over you. But, you know, the fact that there is some merit to it.
Correct.
Well, so we are starting to approach the hour, if we haven't hit it already, and we're very grateful for the time that you've been able to give to us, and we will be certainly reminding our listeners as the weeks go by to check out the petition if anybody misses it, and pass it along. I just wonder, is there anything that you would, maybe you'd each like to take a couple of minutes just to wrap up, if you have anything else to say?
Phil? Oh, yeah, right. I just hope people will respectfully remember all of the 3,000 that have given their lives, and a lot of them, like my husband, had fought 4 years in the Air Force, and he died a real shameful death on his own soil that he protected. And I just want people to, you know, sign the petition that we need the truth, and we were all neighbors. We're all trying to get along, and we need the truth to come out now. We have to have it safer for our children and generations to come. And I want to thank you for inviting us on the radio.
Well, we're very glad to have you here, and Mr. Berg, if you would mind saying something as well. And
sure. First off, as I stated, it's an honor to be representing Ellen Mariani, and we are so appreciative of Black Op Radio and Len and you, Anita, for allowing us to discuss this topic. There's so many legitimate questions that must be answered, regarding the flight boxes and the black boxes and the flight manifest. I'm sorry? We still with you?
Yeah, sorry, just a little accident.
No problem. But the presidential daily briefings that aren't released, why the Bush administration is stonewalling the commission, why were 29 pages of the 9/11 committee report personally censored at George Bush's request, the airport surveillance tapes, which Ellen had mentioned, why did Bush's brother Jeb, the governor of Florida, go to the offices of the Hoffman Aviation School and order that flight records and files be removed? These files were then put on a C-130 government cargo plane and flown out of the country. Where were they taken, and who ordered it done? Why? Why are so many unanswered questions? The military jets not being scrambled, that's frightening. Why did Bush stay in the classroom like an idiot when our country was under attack, listening to a ghost story, and Bush showed no emotional reaction to the news, probably indicating he knew about the World Trade Center? If we recall, he's made several statements that he saw the first plane hit the first World Trade Center on 9/11. Well, no one else saw that footage until 9/12. How did he see it? How did he know about it? These type things are frightening. The most important thing is we are determined to find out the truth. To find out the truth, we need the help of every one of your listeners. If every one of your listeners, as soon as the show is over, would go to the website, 911forthetruth.com, and read and sign the petition, and send it on to everyone on their email list, and tell them tonight to read it and sign it and send it on, those numbers on our list should double tonight, and there's no reason why you can't. And we should, because we need the numbers. We know the government's looking at our website. We know they're looking at the petition, and we want to show them that there's strength in numbers of the citizens of this country. And if we do it together, I believe Bush will be out of office by June of 2004. We will force him to resign because he's an absolute disgrace to the citizens of this country and the people around the world. We are so thankful that you are allowing us to talk about this. We hope you invite us back. We hope your listeners read our entire site, because it says, get on the people in your communities, get on the other talk shows, get on the newspapers, the magazines. Why aren't they discussing and reporting this topic? Like, for instance, Ellen and I and many others, are absolutely positively against rape. We are against child molestation. But the stories of Michael Jackson and Kobe Bryant, which are in the forefront, should be way behind this story, which could end up as the destruction of this country. We need everyone to stand together to fight the mob in the White House. Let's get the facts out there. We're determined. We will spend every waking hour to find the results. We need your help. Sign the petition, spread it on, send money if you can. And at the bottom of the website it says, if you know someone that has information, or if you have information, send it to us. If necessary, we'll go to court to protect your identity, to get you whistleblower status, to protect your confidentiality. We will do that. We know that people around this country, around the world, have information that can help us to come to the almighty truth. And that's what we want out of this case, and that would make us very happy to find out the truth for the memory of Louis Neal Mariani and the other 3,000 individuals who were murdered on 9/11. And we thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, we agree with that, and even so, I don't have any particular grudge with George Bush personally, so that wherever the truth lands, let the chips fall where they may. And it doesn't mean that we're headhunting for anybody in particular, but by them stonewalling, covering it up, it only looks worse.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. People have said, well, how come you haven't named this person or that person from the prior administrations? If the evidence goes there, we'll add them in. We are looking for the truth no matter where it goes. This issue is not a Republican issue, not a Democratic issue. It's not a male issue or female issue. This issue is for the country at large. This issue is for the furtherance of what people around the world fight and die for every day. And what is that? That's democracy. That's freedom. Let's not give it up.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And on that note, I guess we're going to sign off for the night. And this has been Black Op Radio, again, number 156, January 15th, 2004. And we've had two very special guests on, Ellen Mariani and Philip J. Berg, her lawyer. Thank you again for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much, because I think it does take an awful lot of bravery for you even to bring this lawsuit, just to start it. And I hope you get some of the depositions you're hoping for.
Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay, everybody. Good evening then, and thank you, Len, for another interesting night chat. And you've been joined by Len Osanic and Anita Langley here in the control room. Good evening.
You've been listening to Black Op Radio, broadcasting weekly from the Fiasco Brothers recording studio in Vancouver, Canada. You're listening to the Fiasco Brothers Radio Network.